Hello everyone and welcome back to the second part of the video where we'll be discussing about the descriptions of each section that we have seen in the previous video that we had the O-level course divided into 6 sections, right? So we will be talking about in this video how does each section is further subdivided, what we have in each of these sections, what are the topics we will be covering, and I'll give you a basic idea of which topics are relatively a bit harder and it requires a bit more time, and which topics are comparatively easier and you can complete it up very quickly. So let's start with it. Let's quickly see what are the syllabus contents and what you're going to face. So you will have a proper idea going further into the syllabus. Okay. So I hope you download the syllabus yourself first also. Before watching the video, you have the syllabus with you so that as I go through the syllabus, you can also match with it. There are a few updates in the current syllabus that will be covering up in 2022 and 23, I guess. So I will be covering that in another video, but there will be very slight changes. 1 or 2 topics will be removed and added a few new topics we'll be covering up in another video. So let's go through the current syllabus that we have and talk about all the topics that are covered in the syllabus. Alright, let's start. Okay, so let us focus on section 1 first. So in section 1, as we talked about, section 1 was general physics. Okay, so under general physics, you see the topics that you're going to cover is physical quantities, units and measurements. This is a very basic thing. It shouldn't take you more than 2 classes to complete it and make a few practice. At max 3 classes with an assessment. So this is what you're going to go through when you're studying physical quantities, units and measurements. You can go through the descriptions once you download the syllabus. I won't be going through this one. So section 1 that we have, general physics, is divided into, the first one is physical quantities, measurements and units. Okay. So you go to the next one, then we start section 2. Section 1 is quite small. Newtonian mechanics. In Newtonian mechanics, we cover a lot of things. The first one is kinematics, which consists of a lot of topics, actually a lot of understanding in this one. The graphical analysis of motion takes quite a bit of time. There is free fall and terminal velocity, I guess, so which also requires time, including reference to terminal velocity. This is also something which is very important. You'll have to cover up in your syllabus and quite conceptual, I would say. Okay, so the terminal velocity, as I was saying, this is a very important thing and it takes a bit of time for understanding. The graphical analysis is the most important part here. It governs the shape of the speed-time graph in a body under these 4 conditions, right? So this takes quite a lot of time in understanding in kinematics. And then in Newtonian mechanics we have dynamics. Okay. Dynamics also is about forces. Comparatively less calculations, but you will find that the formula force equals to mass into acceleration is widely used in velocity and acceleration chapter questions also. So these 2 chapters are usually will have combined questions in your question paper. When you solve them, you will find that out. Another topic is circular motion, which you will read very briefly, but we'll have some questions from there. Mass weight density is comparatively an easier chapter, which we finished quite quickly. We don't even get questions which are very difficult from here. So this is comparatively easier. And then you have turning effects of forces, which is again involving a lot of calculations and everything. So you spend a bit of time here in calculations and understanding the concepts. Few concepts of center of mass, center of gravity, how do they affect the calculations. You need a bit of time. Deformation is a bit easier one, doesn't involve a lot of calculations, does not require a lot of understanding, pretty straightforward, doesn't take a lot of time, a few theoretical things. Pressure is the next part in the second part, which is Newtonian mechanics. Chapter 7 is pressure. This one requires quite a lot of time. You see the syllabus content is quite large here. You have up to I, and this requires a lot of time. You have to spend a good amount of time on this chapter, both for theory part and for the calculations part. There are a few conceptual things here which you have to realize. The hydraulic system, the manometer, the barometer, these are the things which you have to pay a lot of attention to. Then we have section 3, energy and thermal physics. So you see here we have energy sources and transfer of energy. The first part is easy, major energy sources. But when you go to this second part, that is work done, how do you calculate work done, how do you calculate efficiency, how do you calculate power from here, this requires a bit of calculations which you have to pay attention to. And sources of energy, these are all theoreticals, more or less we have already learned it in junior classes, won't be very difficult for you, but you have to spend time here doing the calculations. Transfer of thermal energy, conduction, convection, radiation, most of us have already studied this in lower classes, class 6, 7, we have already discussed what is conduction, convection and radiation, so shouldn't be very new to you, but you will have questions which are a bit more practical based, which requires more analysis, but it's not a very difficult chapter, it's more of a theoretical part. Once you're done with this one, here you have a new thing, principles of thermometry, practical thermometers. This is something you have to go through very, what do you call that, point-wise. There are a lot of theories here, a lot of comparisons between mercury thermometer, alcohol thermometer. A few of the definitions are very important. Sensitivity, this definitions, the sensitivity range, and let me just highlight it for you, sensitivity range and linearity of thermometers. You have to not only learn the definition, understand the concept of this words, okay? Sensitivity range, linearity of thermometers. And there is another word called responsiveness, which is not given here, you will find it in your book. That also is very important, understanding those concepts, okay? So this goes for thermometer. Then we have thermal properties of matter, specific heat capacity, melting point. This chapter requires a lot of calculation, and you'll have a lot of maths from here. Both the calculations are sometimes straightforward, which are very easy to answer, and often at points you will have to understand the values, what values are given, for which condition, and then you have to answer. So this chapter also requires quite a bit of time in practicing the maths, understanding the concepts. Although there is very few things here, but the practice requires time. So in your book you will find it as two different chapters. One is specific heat capacity, one is melting volume, but they are combined together under the same chapter, which is thermal properties of matter. Then you have kinetic model of matter. This won't be very difficult. I would say this requires very less amount of time. It's mostly theoretical, but you will have questions from here which are not very difficult, I would say. Then you have general wave properties, which is section 4. Section 4 general of waves have 4 things. The first one is general wave properties, which is talking about all types of waves, the common behavior of waves. The second part is the light, which talks about the basic properties of light waves, reflection, refraction, and the lenses, how do light behave. And in the fourth property, you will have, where do we go there? The sound. So these are the 4 chapters under waves. The first one is the general wave properties, then you have reflection, refraction, then you have electromagnetic spectrum and lenses, and then you have sound. Okay, sound wave, how do sound waves behave, what are the uses, applications. Sound wave is basically a theoretical chapter, but still requires quite a bit of time because there's a lot of theory to cover in this chapter. Comparatively easy, but requires a bit of more time because of the contents that are there. There are a lot of contents here which you have to cover up. Okay, so this goes for waves. Then we come to the 5th property, which is electricity and magnetism. This is the most important part of all of physics, and students face maximum problem in this section, section 5. So it's better if you could start your syllabus with this part of the syllabus of O levels. If you can start with electricity, maybe magnetism you can do a bit later. First you have to start with electricity. If you can start with electricity content, you will have 2 years to study electricity. In most of the cases we see the students start electricity and magnetism in class 10, which is actually not a very, I would say, good suggestion to do, because if you start in class 10, you have only a few months to study about electricity and magnetism. But if you start electricity and magnetism in class 9, at least if you start any one of them in class 9, you will have 2 years to cover them up. In class 9 you can finish them, and again you can revise them in class 10. So if there is a difficult topic, you should start it early, not keep it for the later part, okay? So electricity and magnetism is one of the most, I wouldn't say the difficult part, one of the most important part of the syllabus, which you have to give more time, requires a lot of understanding, requires a lot of practice, and in your question paper, has the maximum value of marks. You will see a lot of marks coming from these two chapters combined, electricity and magnetism. So you see there are, in section 5 you have starting from 17, then you have 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, yes you have, and 24. So there are basically 7 parts, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24. 8 subdivisions under that part, magnetism and electricity. Okay, so this covers a huge part of your syllabus, and in your question papers will have a huge content of marks when you're combining it in paper 1 and paper 2. So this is the focus of the syllabus, I would say. Students find this part the most difficult. And then in the last part we have electronic systems. This comes, there is something here. There is no compulsory question set on this section of the syllabus. Questions set on topics within section 25 are always set as an alternative within a question. So this questions from this section will never have a compulsory part. Let it be in paper 1, you never have this part. Electronic systems never comes in paper 1. But if you have it in paper 2, this always comes as an option. We will see that later when we solve the question paper. And then the last part of the syllabus is section 6 is atomic physics, which is radioactivity, the nuclear atom, up to here. So this one is mostly theoretical, covers a huge part of the syllabus. It's not very difficult, but the contents are more. Requires a lot of time to finish the syllabus for this one, but it's comparatively easier. There are a lot of theories in this one, in this part of the syllabus, which you have to learn how to write them properly. According to the mark scheme, what are the points you should be writing to score full marks, and for that you need a clear understanding. So this part requires a lot of time because the contents are large and it's mostly theoretical, but isn't very difficult. I wouldn't say this is very difficult, but isn't very easy either. You have to spend time on this one. So this covers your O-level syllabus. These are the contents that you will be covering, and you will get 2 years for finishing them and giving your mock exams after that. Okay? So I hope this video helped you out to understand what you are going to get into in the next 2 or 3 years of your life, or if you're taking physics O-level exams. Alright, so stay tuned. We will have more videos coming up for about O-level physics, the question papers, the patterns of the question papers, how to solve them, and also we'll make videos content on specific chapters or topics which are usually very difficult for the students to understand. Okay, thank you everyone. Hope the video helped you out.